All right, we're recording.
Great. So everybody just heard that. Just so you know, you're being recorded. Always like to announce that to begin with. Welcome, everybody. This is our first Bicycle and Pedestrian Advocacy Network meeting. And just for those of you who might be joining and don't know a little of the background on this, for the last two New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition summits, we did have sessions that were actually put together by Polly, who's with us tonight, and brought together advocates from all different towns across the state of New Jersey to share and talk about their experience, particularly with complete streets and advocacy for biking and walking in towns. At the last summit, which was in June, beginning of June, we also talked about at the end of the session how we could sort of continue the conversation, because there was a lot of interest and a lot of people wanting to share their experience. So we can only have the summit once a year, but there's no reason we can't be having these conversations and having some type of a forum and platform to help us learn from each other, learn from different case studies. So that's sort of what gave birth to this idea. This is our first one. It's open to anybody who wants to advocate really for biking and walking. And the focus for these meetings are really on people who are advocating in their local towns, rather than they have necessarily a professional position, either in planning or in engineering, or in a state agency, but certainly everybody is welcome. So the focus is really on how can we empower, help our local advocates across the state to do the job they need to do in their local towns, to make all of our towns safer for biking and walking, and to implement complete streets. We had a great and generous offer from the mayor to do a presentation on Eatontown's checklist for complete and green streets. So we're going to start with a presentation that he's going to do, and then we're going to have questions and answers. There's a chat function that everybody can put in, although I don't see the chat function. Lauren, do you see it? Are you guys seeing it at the bottom?
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. Okay. So while the presentation is going on, you can also be putting in questions, and then we'll have sort of an open session of questions. I don't think we have too many people tonight that we need to go to breakout rooms, but we can also take a poll later if people want to do that, so that we can have conversations in smaller groups. One of the things we just talked about was after this session, sending out a poll. I can throw out a few ideas I've heard about what the next session for this could be, but we also want to reach out to everybody, probably with some type of a Google form or something, to give us input into what are the topics that you'd like to be talking about in the next sessions, and also any suggestions for presenters going forward. We are recording this, and Lauren and I are gonna have a discussion after this about exactly where this is gonna live and how to sort of incorporate this network into the Bike and Walk Coalition website. So welcome, everybody. We're really excited you're all here. I don't think we have too many people to do a quick intro. So since it's our first time, why don't we go through everybody quickly who's here. Lauren, you can call out names and I'll start. So I'm Deborah Kagan, and I am the Executive Director of the New Jersey Bike and Walk Coalition, and welcome.
And I'm Lauren Rushing, and I'm the Communications and Community Engagement Manager at New Jersey Bike and Walk. And I'm just going to go to my right first. Polly, I see you there.
Hi, Polly Shulga. I'm one of the founders of Asbury Park Complete Streets Coalition from 2015. And so we're very young, but going along here.
Lauren, you're muted.
Sorry. Josh, you're next.
Oh, hi, everyone. My name is Josh Cogdill. I'm from Cranford, New Jersey. I do the Bike and Walk Cranford thing sometimes, and I'm also on the Cranford's Bike and Walk Pedestrian Committee. So I really appreciate being invited, and hope we can get something done. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Paul.
Yeah, my name is Paul Daly. I live in Madison, New Jersey, and been trying to find my way into a group like this for a few years now. I've been on the planning board and the zoning board in Madison, but haven't been involved in anything specifically related to bike transport until today.
All right, well, welcome. And Leanne?
Hi, Leanne Von Hagen. During the day job, which also extends well into the night, I work at the Voorhees Transportation Center at Rutgers, doing both the Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center and the Safe Routes Resource Center, and several other hats. And I'm here as, you know, on my personal interest level on walking, biking, and in general. And yes, we're getting thunderstorms too. I heard that, Paul, in Madison. And by the way, I grew up in Madison, so.
And I went to Rutgers, so.
There you go. It's a small world.
All right, Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Adair. I live in Hoboken, and I'm here representing Bike Hoboken. I see another Bike Hoboken board member here today, Emmanuel, as well. I actually did not grow up in New Jersey. I grew up in Northern California, but I've been in Hoboken for 20 years, and I've been involved with Bike Hoboken for probably 4 or 5 years now, and I'm also on the Vision Zero task force here in Hoboken.
All right, thanks, Chris. And Emanuela, you are to the right of Chris on my screen, so we'll go with you next.
Great. Well, I'm with Bike Hoboken as well, and I'm also a member of the Jersey City Cycling Crew, and getting to know the other local bike groups in Hudson County, and started a Slack for all of the local clubs to get together and talk about roads that crisscross, that go through our communities, which all kind of run together.
All right. And I know we've talked a lot over social media, so it's nice to finally see your face.
Yeah, you too.
All right, Susan.
Hi, good evening. While I work professionally in the field, I'm also an advocate, and I split time between New Jersey and New Paltz. I'm here in New Paltz. A friend of mine recently got killed on his bike about 15 miles from here. And so I've been working with some of the local communities here to try to figure out how to get some traction in the advocacy world. And I'll tell you that it saddens me greatly that there is no like bike walk coalition in the Hudson Valley like there is in New Jersey. So kudos to New Jersey. So it's pretty interesting being on the other side of the border. I was born in Camden, which if you want to scare people, you just say that. And grew up my whole life in New Jersey. And I happen to be the Madison planner. So Paul, I've been with the planning board for 12 years. You don't look familiar, but maybe zoning board, I remember you from.
I served 2008 to 2010.
Oh my God. So
yeah.
Are you telling me I have a terrible memory? You are.
No, I'm telling you, it was a long time ago that I was on there, much more than 12 years ago. More than 12 years ago.
Okay.
Well, just barely. Yeah, we might have just passed it. Yeah.
Slightly better, but I'm very grateful for this group and look forward to hearing from everyone.
Thank you, Susan. Anthony.
My name's Anthony. I'm the mayor of the borough of Eatontown, and you'll be hearing from me in a couple minutes.
Great. And sorry, I would have referred to you as Mayor Talerico, but I was seeing another Anthony on my screen as well. So
you should hear the way some people refer to me. Anthony is just fine. Thank you.
Great. So Anthony Durant, is that it?
Durant, yeah. Yeah, like Susan, I also work professionally in the field as a transportation planner, focused on active transportation, really on safety. But tonight, wearing my local advocate hat as chair of the Pedestrian and Cyclist Safety Committee in Cranford, with Josh. So happy to be here. Happy to see everybody.
Awesome, thanks. Samuel.
Oh, hi, my name's Sam Bunting. I am a resident in Princeton. I am a contributor to the Walkable Princeton blog. Find us at walkableprinceton.com. I am a former member of the Princeton Pedestrian and Bicycling Joint Advisory Committee, the Municipal Transportation Advisory Committee, and the Complete Streets Committee when it existed, and the Sidewalk Task Force. So I've been involved in various walking and biking initiatives in Princeton. I'm not from Princeton, obviously. I grew up in Northern Ireland and in UK. I moved to the USA in 2006, lived in Washington, DC. I've been an active cyclist the whole time. And it's great to connect with some fellow activists here in New Jersey.
Great, and you can bring us some of those European insights then. Okay, Kathleen.
Kathleen, you're muted.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Ebert, and I am an advocate from Point Pleasant Borough, New Jersey. I started an advocacy group called Point Pleasant Borough Complete Streets after I graduated from the Blaustein School at Rutgers University and studied a lot about street safety and learned a lot about complete streets. So I love joining these types of things to learn more from you all and what I could do to help the community. So thank you.
And Lisa?
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Seriasol. I'm in Princeton, New Jersey, along with Sam, and I chair the Princeton's Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee, and I also work with Greater Mercer TMA with Leanne Von Hagen, and as a Safe Routes to School educator, I also work on the Street Smart program, and I'm looking forward to working with this group as well.
All right, Ryan?
Let me unmute myself here. Thanks, Lauren. My name is Ryan Emge. I'm resident of Weehawken, New Jersey, and starting early phases of an idea around getting a Weehawken to adopt a complete streets program. So right now we're calling our organization Bike Weehawken, and we hope to mimic and at some future date have some parity with at least Chris in Hoboken and Tony in Jersey City and some of the other nearby towns. So I want to figure out what needs to happen to get to complete streets, and happy to meet all of you here tonight.
Okay, Candace?
Hi, I'm Candace Faust. I'm the chair of the Complete Streets Committee in Eatontown, and excited to hear our mayor speak in a little bit, and happy to see this group. It's nice to see a lot of advocates, and I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say.
Barbara? Are you there, Barbara?
Barbara might be watching her grandkid, if I know Barbara.
Okay,
so
we will maybe circle back
Okay.
around then. Yeah, so we'll go with Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Oscarelli. We've got Thunder here too. I am part of the West Windsor Bicycle and Pedestrian Alliance. I'm on the board. I'm also a big volunteer for the East Coast Greenway Alliance, and I bike the whole thing. What can I say? And I blog about my bike rides on exploringbybike.com.
Great, thanks, Sylvia. And then Joseph.
Hello, my name is John Russell. I live in Collingswood, Cameron County. I'm a persistently loud local supporter of bike and pedestrian safety. I have worked on the Collingswood Green Team, last working on a DVRPC grant to better connect Collingswood and Haddon Township together by bike and walkways. I'm a member of the Bicycle Coalition of Greater Philadelphia. I am part of a loose confederation of South Jersey urbanists who are interested in walkability, bikeability, dense walkable communities, things like that. And I live next to Camden and would love to take you all on a bike ride through the city sometime if you would like.
Great, thank you. Okay, so some folks have moved around a little bit, but I think we've got everybody. If you didn't introduce yourself, speak now. I see Barbara unmuting herself.
Yes. Hi, I'm Barbara Stark, and I've lived in Eatontown for 44 years with my husband. We enjoy being part of the community. I'm a member of the Complete Streets Committee here in Eatontown, and as a former teacher, I'm always happy and willing to learn more about making everything accessible in town for other people. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So I think that was everybody. I'll turn it back over to you, Deb.
Great. Well, we have a terrific collection here of so many different towns from all over the state. So thank you all so much for coming. I should also add, by the way, that I'm part of Bike Walk Montclair. So that's my my local advocacy work. I've lived in town here for over 30 years and was president of Bike Walk Montclair for about 3 years. So my orientation really comes from local advocacy. This is where I started really getting involved and excited about these issues. So I am thrilled that you all want to create this network and hope to see it really grow. So tonight we had, for our first meeting, we had an offer from Anthony to do a presentation about using the checklist from the Green and Complete Streets in Eatontown. So Anthony, are you ready? We're going to turn that over to you.
I am.
When you're done, we'll do some Q&A, and then we can sort of have a general discussion and talk about some of the main issues that people are facing, maybe give us some orientation for topics going forward. Thank you all.
Okay, so thank you, everybody. Before I begin, I would like to thank, Candace and Barbara for our town. Were very instrumental in getting this going. And obviously, Leanne Von Hagen, hi, we love you. You did a lot of great work in Eatontown. A lot of the money that I have in my bank for Complete Streets has your name on it for your efforts. So I want to thank you publicly for your efforts putting together planning studies and really set the ball rolling. So thank you.
Well, we try. And I have staff. It's not just me.
That's fine. You can thank the appropriate people. So, obviously I want to talk about the checklist, but the checklist is the easy part. It's getting to the checklist. That's the struggle. And I just wanted to talk about why Eatontown was successful. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to hope I did it right. I practiced this with Lauren about 25 times. That's not how you do it. That's not how you do it. There you go. How does this work? Lauren, everything good?
That looks great. You got it.
Great. Okay. So basically what I wanted just to tell you is real simple. Why was Eatontown successful? The only answer is that we had fewer politicians involved. It sounds silly, but I say it everywhere I go. Politicians mess things up. The people who did this were the volunteers, right? And the volunteers are the ones that got the politicians to notice. And, we'll take credit for it and we'll be proud about it. But the reality is that it's the volunteers who did the work. And so Eatontown was very successful in having a group of civic-minded people move forward. And here's how it happened. So in 2017, the borough of Eatontown was doing its master plan reexamination. Towns do that different periods of time. By the way, you can do it whenever you want. And there's also a statutory time period. But we were in our master plan reexamination. And one of the things that we did through the planning board was have all the different borough groups in town, the volunteer groups, meet with reps from the planning board to see what their interests were. And what we saw was people were saying the same thing. The rec committee wanted outdoor areas for people to be active, bike and walk. The police department was tired of responding to calls of bicyclists getting hit, of course. So they had all this crash data of people getting hit. Our Shade Tree Commission, we have these beautiful arboretum and they have these trails they wanted to highlight through the arboretum. Our Beautify Committee wanted to highlight some of our parks and walking areas with flowers and make people want to go there. Our Historical Committee had a 2-mile historical trail. And all these people were saying similar things, but nobody was saying it to each other. So we didn't even know the word complete streets existed, but the concept of getting people out and walking and the town is not just for cars was in everyone's mind, but nobody was talking to each other. So in 2017, a few individuals who later formed our committee were at the League of Municipalities. They're dorks. These people, I lovingly say that they were dorks, and they went to every possible class the league offered. And one of them was on complete streets. They had no idea what it was. They didn't know what the terminology meant. They thought it had something to do with zoning. One was on the zoning board, one was on the planning board, and they listened to it and they said, wow, this is exactly what we're talking about in all these committees. People are talking about getting people out safely. And this is the exact concept, and they brought it back to Eatontown. So they brought it back to Eatontown. They found one councilwoman that took up their cause, and a group of these individuals moved forward to get the town to first adopt a committee by resolution. Real simple, low lift, low level of authority, no budget, no scheduled meeting times, just acknowledging their mere existence. And then they took the ball and ran with it. And fast forward 2 years later, we adopted the ordinance. So in between, the group eventually grew. And this is how we're represented. It's not just people who love to bicycle, because some of these people have never ridden a bicycle, but they have common causes and common goals. The Shade Tree Commission, like I mentioned, our traffic advisory, the Environmental Commission with also green team representation, the Beautify, Historical, the Board of Education, so we can bring the safe routes to school. We had advisory members, so people with authority in the borough, the zoning officer, our land use administrator, the director of recreation, the borough administrator. And then in 2020, seeing how the state of New Jersey identified priority communities, we added somebody who travels in a wheelchair. And so we're able to bring in the input. You know, I think I'm inclusive. I think I hear all viewpoints. I don't know what it's like to travel in a wheelchair. And so this individual is able to share those vantage points. And so our committee now represented a cross section. So take a look at these groups. Each of these groups every month was talking to all of their board members, how someone from their group met and is talking about complete streets. So when you look, there's probably 50 volunteers in this section here, and they're all talking once a month about complete streets. And at the same time, the council members briefly giving a report in her council report. So now we're seeing the concept of complete streets taking shape. We had a policy way back in 2014. We did nothing with it. I was on the borough council at the time. I apologize. I did nothing with it. I didn't fully understand it. I'm willing to admit my ignorance. We adopted it because it sounded good and literally did nothing with it, unfortunately, because there was kind of a stagnation at that time. And so what this policy did was we updated to reflect the current initiatives and green infrastructure. Remember, the NJDOT policy is not just complete streets, it's complete and green streets for all. So we're not just putting a sidewalk and saying, ooh, boy, we're complete. It's looking at items in development that touch on green and touch on priority communities to really bring in the inclusiveness. And a DOT checklist was added by policy. The Borough Council literally passed an ordinance, and that ordinance said the following: if you go to the planning board, or if you go to the zoning board, you will, as a condition of your application, complete our complete streets checklist. And by our, I mean the NJDOT Complete and Green Streets for All checklist. It is literally attached in the ordinance. It is on my zoning officer's desk. It is at the counter of the construction department. Everybody knows it. And our engineers and our planners, they must reference it in their review of the application. And they must acknowledge that these applicants filled out the checklist. We'll get to the checklist in a second. Not only that, but if and when the borough does its own building projects, for example, if we're going to build a new rec building or acquire some property on the new Fort Monmouth that's being redeveloped, we ourselves are supposed to fill out the checklist. Now, to be honest, I don't know if when that's going to actually happen, because we may not necessarily build a building anytime soon. But you know, these volunteers are going to hold us accountable, and they're going to ask to see this checklist to make sure that we are including all of these concepts. And it's to make sure that no project, not even the borough's own projects, overlook these concepts. So it was adopted by ordinance. The model policy was adopted by ordinance in 2019 and May of 2019, and I'm very proud of that. And that after that, with the street cred of an adopted ordinance, the first in the state, I might say, we then formalized the Complete Streets Committee by ordinance. So that is now a fully functioning borough committee. It has a budget and it's fully functioning. Unfortunately, their first year was the COVID year, so no one knew which way was up. But you know, we did give them the recognition of a full committee, and they are moving forward. The checklist, and you're not going to be able to see it very well on the screen, focuses on what you would normally expect all construction and development projects. You know, the developing the project, engineering, construction, and maintenance. And Complete Streets should be thought of in all these areas here. We just don't want you to go to the planning board with a really great concept, but then you don't design it, and then you don't build it, and then you don't maintain it. This is designed to make sure that from the submission of your project, through the engineering review, through the enabling resolution, that any project that comes out of the planning board has this in here. It actually will say in our completed resolution that they will build a sidewalk, boom. So 5 years from now, if that sidewalk doesn't exist, they no longer have site plan approval. They have to go back to the planning board or pour the concrete sidewalk again. It's a condition of their approval. That's how we made it. And you can see there's a couple, I don't know how much you can see here, but there are checklists, and it's very simple. These applicants should not consider themselves burdened. Yes, no, and then describe it. So very simple. Are there accommodations for bicyclists? Yes or no? If you have a no, better have a very good reason why there are no accommodations for a bicycle. We are now requiring that they put a bike rack. Really simple. And if you want to be arrogant and tell me that, no, none of our customers come with and ride their bike, well, you know what? Maybe the people who clean your stores, maybe they ride a bike, and they're just worth just as much as your customers. And so we require in our resolutions that you have a bike rack on all of your properties. So if you get a development approved through our planning board, you will have a bike rack as a condition of approval. But look at some of these things. So when you look at traffic stress, you're also expected to look at it with pedestrian suitability, bicycle conditions. Are there any physical or perceived impediments to bicycle and pedestrians? So as the developer is acknowledging that there may be some impediments, our planner can work with them to mitigate some of those factors. As things are being constructed, are you providing safe access during the construction? Can you make your sidewalks open during construction so people don't have to walk in the street during your construction site? You know, and are we considering things like restriping, snow removal, lighting, just to make sure that people who are pedestrians around your project and through your plan, that those individuals have clear ways to get through your project as well. And so we take great pride in going through this, and it's very, very helpful. This on the left of your screen, is kind of the image that is everywhere when you Google Complete Streets. It recognizes the policy, and it basically tells you, number one, that all applicants in Eatontown before the planning and zoning boards have to complete the checklist. They have to. There's no exception. We also adopted a sidewalk ordinance. So in the borough of Eatontown, we have an ordinance that says that you will put a sidewalk on the perimeter of all of your projects. And if you don't, you will pay money into a trust fund for us to build sidewalks someplace else. Since that time, everyone has decided that they're going to put sidewalks on their own projects, and it worked out great. There are very limited, narrow exceptions of why they don't have to put a sidewalk, public safety, or maybe you're going through a wetland or something, but these are very limited and narrow focus. And in those instances, you pay into the coffer. Otherwise, you're required to put a sidewalk. And we expect a bike rack. We just come out and say, listen, we really would like you to put a bike rack. It's $200. You know, you're paying your attorney $500 an hour, put a bike rack, and these people do just by asking. So why adopt Complete Streets? One of the things I wanted to encourage everybody is we were successful in Eatontown. Our volunteers were successful in Eatontown because they let everybody who was a decision maker understand how it was important to them. To be honest with you, some people don't care about bicycling. They just don't. That's the reality. And if you ask them to make decisions based on importance of bicycling, they don't care. But the concepts are the same. I, as the mayor, happen to believe the bicyclist should be safe, but some people who never ride a bike may not care. But they might also think about equity and equitable transportation, how getting to work, they may not have the luxury of a car, and they may have to ride their bike. We talk about reducing injury and death, and how often our volunteers have to respond to first aid calls, or police going to calls, and how often do people have to die or get seriously injured in the borough of Eatontown until we take this seriously. We talk about increasing capacity, getting more people into the business districts, getting more people into a shopping plaza. Some people don't care about walking or biking, but they care about business. So talk on their own terms. Maybe I don't like the fact that they don't care about people biking and walking, but I'll meet them at their level, and they want people in their business plaza. Well, if you want people in your plaza, give them a safe, well-lit spot to park their bike so it's not going to be stolen. And let people come into your plaza and shop, and you make money, and my people get to be safe. Some people don't care about any of that, but they like the idea of a healthy habit, right? We have obesity rising. We have people who just want to be more healthy, and walking and biking is certainly a healthy alternative. That may appeal to them. Some people look at commercial values, and people may say, look, to resell my property, to attract tenants into my strip mall, into my plaza, it's worth more money if I make it biker friendly or walker friendly, if I have better access. So, if that's what makes them tick, then you're able to approach them in that section. Because remember, the key principles I showed you on a slide earlier are public health and safety, green streets, economy, and equity. So there's something here for everybody. I wanted to show you what made Eatontown adopt this. That's a sidewalk that could be anywhere in Eatontown. And I'm embarrassed to say it might not have been fixed since when this picture was taken. But what happened, our Complete Streets group, here's what they did. They advertised on Facebook, we're going for a walk. We're going to walk with the fire department. Who doesn't want to walk with the fire department? And so they walked. The cops were there. The fire department was there. The CERT team gave out water. Everybody was happy. Everybody was there. And the politicians took a walk too, because politicians like to be out with people. And while they're walking, they're pointing out the sidewalks. And it's kind of a slap in the face, because now it means that my roads aren't being maintained. Don't you think I'm taking it seriously? We've created a list in our administrator's office of sidewalks that are being ripped up by our shade trees, sidewalks that are incomplete. And we are trying to, in our road program, allocate concrete funding in each of our road programs. So when the contractor is out, we have a list of project ready, or I guess that's the right term, sidewalks that we can just give the contractor a list and say, hey, go fix this, go fix that. Because this group of people pointed it out to us. And it's very easy to drive past and not notice, but when you are in a wheelchair and you have to go over that, or when you're walking in a stroller with your kids, none of which I do, I may miss it. But for those who don't, they're able to point it out. And this was a very effective way of politely letting the politicians know, hey, you have responsibilities here. And they got the community engaged with walking. And this was one of the walks. We walked in our arboretum. We walked right down. This is a state road, Route 71 here at the top. We walked right down the main road. People brought their dogs. It was about a 2.5-mile walk. Someone's got their camera there. And don't you believe, 2 or 3 council members in that group, they got an earful. It was very effective. In the bottom, you can see a flyer that we made, Eatontown Community Walk. We walked in our arboretum, and we had someone from our Shade Tree Commission talking about the different trees and why it's important. And the Complete Streets Committee was there as well, talking about their new initiative. So as 40 people are walking through the arboretum, talking about something that interests them, trees and the environment, they went ahead and were able to get an earful from the Complete Streets Committee. We also have the historical walking tour in our museum. They advertised a walking tour right down the main street in Eatontown, where there was a little narrative about each building, and you can walk a little way. And they talked about Complete Streets that was tied in there as well. So we're able to reach each of these groups where they're where they are. I think the takeaway that I'd like to mention to everybody, if I could just move back, the takeaway is, quite frankly, you need a broad group of interested people. And I say this lightly, not to sound disrespectful, but if you have a person who is a strong advocate for only one type of initiative, and they're at every meeting harping and harping and harping, sometimes the reality is that those people they're not well received. But if you have a group of people that are historians or like to pick up litter or on the Shade Tree Commission and also bike advocates and pedestrian advocates as well, they should be represented, that are working together, you create a broader coalition. You might get someone who's on your planning board or zoning board that you know well. You can give them a copy of the checklist, even though it's not yet adopted. And you could give them the copy and say, hey, when this application goes before you, could you ask these questions of the developer? Could you literally ask them, would you please put a bike rack? It's 5 seconds of your life to ask the question, and you'd be everybody's hero. The zoning board gives use variance. There is a high standard to grant a use variance. These developers want use variances very well because they survive into perpetuity. And so for a few $100 of a bike rack or a little extra sidewalk, they may very well do this. And so what Eatontown did quite effectively was work with individuals on their approach. And those people reached out to our boards, our planning and the zoning board and the council, to explain why it was important to them. And the checklist was just the logical, natural conclusion. Because once we knew what Complete Streets was, and once we knew why everybody was excited, and once we knew why it affected everybody, it seemed like a no-brainer that we should adopt this checklist. And so the last point I'd like to make is that you should seek to explain to the decision makers why this is important to your town, why this isn't a bad thing, and then go ahead and take that approach to gradually introducing the concept.
Excuse me, Anthony, it's Richard. I'm late to the meeting. My apologies. I just got back from the city. So you were making mention of developers. I totally.
Hi, Richard. How are you? We didn't finish the presentation yet. At the end, the host will open it up for questions and everything.
Anyway, well, buonasera, Anton.
Thank you, Richard.
So my question is, I agree with the developer thought process. So that could be Kushner, that could be anybody. It doesn't matter who it is.
Richard.
Yes.
Richard. Hi. We didn't finish the presentation yet. When the presentation's over, they'll open it up for questions and everything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. So in any event, that is the thrust of what I was trying to indicate, the checklist. And what I've offered to do, I reached out at the prior meeting, was if you in your town have somebody on your planning board, on your zoning board, on your borough council, who you think is the most approachable in this regard, I would be very happy to sit with you and them to talk to them and explain just how painless this checklist is, just how easy it is to add, just how it really doesn't create a burden for developers, it doesn't create a burden for the borough, and how it can actually be successful. And so I wanted to end by offering that. You're all advocates in your own region. I lived in Hoboken, and it was an exciting 16 months of my life. I loved it up there. You definitely need to bike and walk in Hoboken. I don't know how anybody drives, but I will come to your town, meet with you guys on Zoom, and if there's a way to adopt this checklist, because I think the more towns that adopt it, these agencies like NJTPA and agencies with funding, Sustainable Jersey, the county, may be able to apply grant funding to towns that are like-minded, that have demonstrated the commitment. So I'll be happy to chat and share, but I wanted just to stress to all the advocates that our success was starting with the individuals, broad base, finding a friend, and gradually introducing it, as opposed to what some advocates do, locked and loaded, go in swinging, and losing your audience. So,
hey, thank you very much for doing that personally. I would just like to commend you for doing it.
Thank you, Richard.
I appreciate it.
Lauren?
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony. So we've got just a couple of questions in the chat, and then I think we can go ahead and open it up to an open discussion. Deb, did you want to say anything at this time, or should we go ahead and go into the questions? Yep. Okay.
Sorry, we can go ahead. I would just suggest, we've now got over 20 people. So I would just suggest, I think we can do an open conversation without breakout. But it might be helpful if people could raise their hands so you can sort of call on people so we're not overlapping when we call out. And you can walk them through after we go through the chat questions, just walk them through raising your hand and reactions.
Okay. Yeah, we've just got a few questions in the chat here. The first one is from Sylvia, and she asks, do you require an inverted U bike rack or the wave racks? Are the wave racks acceptable?
So actually the answer is we don't require, we tell them to do it, and they've always said yes, but we've never taken it to the step of adopting it by ordinance, requiring it by ordinance. We leave this to the discretion of our engineer. The resolution will say, subject to the placement of a bike rack as agreed to by the municipal engineer. We haven't gotten to the point, I don't think I can get my council to adopt an ordinance on bike racks as much as they support complete streets. So I've taken the shortcut of just telling them at the planning board meeting, come on guys, let's go. It's a bike rack, it's $200, you can do this. Hopefully they'll be decorative, hopefully they'll be appropriate, but I'm willing to cut my losses and saying a bike rack is a good start. We can ease into the type of bike rack at a later time.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. And then she also asks, how many bike racks do you require per building, per square footage?
So again, there's no, it's not a number like the ordinance to require it. I think what we've done was just whatever feels right. I think one site plan, I remember saying, can you put a bike rack? And then one site plan when there's a couple different satellite buildings, I vaguely remember saying, could you put a couple of bike racks? And the borough engineer is just going to go out to the contractor and say, hey, the mayor's crazy. He wants 2 bike racks. Can you just put them out? And they'll do it. And that's it. And then that's your communication with the engineer to say, hey, you got a fast food restaurant. Maybe that's appropriate. Or put it by the bank or put it here and there. But we leave a lot to the discretion of our engineer.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. So I know Ryan was asking about the model checklist, but it looks like Leanne has provided that. So that is the NJDOT checklist that you all used, correct? Anthony?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so yep, that's been put in the chat. You can also just Google that and find it online very quickly.
Is that that was the whole bikeways to the beach and like that whole thing? Anthony, is that the thing that you had sent?
No, this is the NJDOT.
Yes.
Complete and green streets for all checklist. We
No, that's
adopted that.
Okay, that was
Yep.
good. Very well done. I like that.
You can thank the state of New Jersey for that.
Are we discussing that or just bike racks?
We can do that we can make that the theme of our other session if you want later on.
I think that's the primary thing. The bike rack is a stationary product. Getting to the beach safely or getting north and south or east or west on any thoroughfare in Monmouth County, let alone the rest of the state, is critical.
So Jess, Rich, I don't know if you're aware, when I invited you to the meeting, I know you were interested about regional bike connectivity. This meeting was to discuss the complete streets checklist. So
okay.
Discussion, if you want to have a discussion about what we had talked, we can talk about that later or separately. I just wanted to continue with what everyone.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I didn't realize. That's cool. Thank you.
All right. So then Ryan asks, what does the budget contributed to the Complete Streets Department go to exactly?
So Ryan, what we did was the following. It's $1,000 or maybe it's $750. Candace, if you're listening, you can correct me. But it's $1,000. And quite frankly, every town that you're in can afford $1,000. I don't care what town you're in. And what it goes to is not salaries or anything, but you can encumber those funds to promote. Go to the local printer and print flyers. We have a community day. One year, the Complete Streets Committee used, remember the old-fashioned slap bracelets, you know, from the good old days? And they had a fluorescent slap bracelets so people can use on their bike while they're walking that would glow in the dark while they're walking. And on it, it talked about complete streets, the borough, just to advertise their product, advertise what they're doing. And hopefully for Eatontown Day, again, they would look to do some promotion. But the budget is meant to demonstrate to the committee that we're willing to provide funding, and now you need to press your initiative to the town. So it's only $1,000. I know that sounds bad when you listen to it, taxpayer money, but to say only, but let's face it, in every town, $1,000 is not going to break any budget. I don't care what your council tells you.
Okay, and it looks like Ryan had kind of a follow-up question to that. Ryan, do you want to ask your question or?
Yeah, I can. Thank you for this briefing, really helpful. We're trying to get our town to adopt this policy and create a committee, just as you're describing, so helpful to go through that. I also like that you mentioned don't go in guns blazing, feeling like you have all your ducks in a row from one pointed spear, come in from a community perspective and create consensus out of the gate. So as it relates to like the funding piece, so that's just going into communication, marketing, advertising, promotion of the Complete Streets program. If that budget didn't exist, would the township have other means and vehicles to do that already? And this is just to augment that awareness of a Complete Streets program, like education in the schools, education in other programs, or and is that $1,000? Is it like per person in the community?
God, if it were per person, I would.
Because I work in marketing and advertising. $1,000 is gone in a nanosecond in advertising. So I'm just wondering, how far do you spread a nickel there?
Just depends how well you did your media buy, Ryan.
So here's how we do it. So each of our groups in town, the Environmental Commission has a budget, the Green Team has a budget, Traffic Advisory, all these people, Traffic Advisory doesn't, they're to the police department, but each group, Historical, has a budget. So when they seek to do something related to their organization, for example, Historical Committee has a historical speaker coming, they pay from it out of that budget. So when, and they encumber it, municipal finance is boring, but that's how they do it. The Complete Streets Committee is treated no differently. They get their $1,000. So maybe they use some of that money to send a couple of their members to the League of Municipalities to listen to 10 seminars. Maybe they go to the Green Team Summit and that pays for that. Maybe they use their money to promote flyers. We made a very large map of Eatontown with all the streets, enormous map. It's somewhere in my office here, and it's enormous. And they can take it out when they're in public and show people, so you can see the whole town and you can look at different routes to get around town. And that map was probably $50 mounted on a thick board, but it's used to educate for their purpose. They can go to the printer and make shirts to encourage what they're doing, maybe as a prize, or it sounds simple and tchotchke, but it promotes them. You don't need a lot of money to promote it, because if you're doing it in a cross section throughout the town, your rec department has a budget. So for the rec department to do a walking program, it doesn't cost it doesn't cost the Complete Streets money. It's just another rec program. The Complete Streets, through the planning board and zoning board, all that study, developers put money in escrow when they go to the planning board and zoning board. So that's not municipal money. When our planner or engineer is reviewing these checklists, that's on the dime of the developer, that's Eatontown taxpayers. The $1,000 is meant just to promote. And again, you're not going to reach the 12,000 Eatontown residents with $1,000, but you might make 300 buttons or 300 Frisbees or 300 water bottles and really get people out there. And you'll see them using them in our parks. You'll see them wearing those wrist bracelets, let it glow in the dark. And that's the goal, to get them out there.
And then one follow-up on that, just on the topic of finance and budgets. I'd like to get some clarity on, once a township adopts a Complete Street project to some degree, I'm trying to think about how this can be positioned to our township on sweetening a deal where this doesn't mean there's any additional cost to the town, So does there some sort of vehicle where this opens up funding at state and federal level? Because I think I'd like to get a sense of the connections there through adopting this policy, so that this shows that once you've done this, therefore, maybe I misinterpreted some of my early education knowledge here, that this opens up funding for you through the state and local government.
Yes, and yes, and yes. So, for example, let's pretend that you have you join the green team and Sustainable Jersey. So Sustainable Jersey has the street cred in the industry of having great projects, and you can either model some projects that they've done, or they have professionals there that can help you work through a project, and you get points by being in Sustainable Jersey. Having those points gives you the street cred to apply for grants, because you're no longer just a bunch of nomads wandering with all these great ideas. You've gone through true and tested procedures. So in Eatontown, we received, I think, 50 points or 45 points in the area of complete streets. And so that got us points towards our Sustainable Jersey bronze. I hope to have silver by next year. So going through a reputable organization like that and applying to the NJTPA, they have grant opportunities out there. We won our $10,000 planning grant on a prayer, and that grant giving us planning is they planned a section of town where we connected two parks, let's say. We created a greenway.
Yes.
So now we went ahead and we applied for probably 5 other grants. 2 of them we got. And those grants are, one was $275,000 because we showed that we had a plan.
Excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah, yes, Richard. I'm just going to finish with Ryan, and then.
Okay, so I just want a clarification. When you say that you got the grants and they were based on professional things, were those professional proposals from landscape urban planning firms, as an example?
No. So what happens is the borough won an NJTPA planning assistance grant, and that planning assistance grant created a document that showed that we could do certain complete streets initiatives and make a greenway throughout town.
Okay.
Having
Which I
the
like.
work of a reputable organization, creating a plan, and then applying for grants. For example, the NJDOT has bikeways grants, they have sidewalk grants, they have safe routes grants.
Yes.
We then apply for those grants using the work of a professional organization. Hey, we're not just making this up. This is something experts have said. The grant writers want to give you the money because it can be done. They've already seen that a professional has said this concept.
That's
so
my
Ryan,
question.
what I would,
That's
Richard,
my
I'm going to
question.
finish with Richard. I'm going to finish with Ryan first, real briefly, okay?
Okay.
So Ryan, one of the things is, what I would recommend is that you can convince your decision makers, your planning, your zoning board, your council, is that by getting involved in doing these initiatives, there's grant opportunities out there. And you and I can talk privately, Ryan, if you want to talk about grant sources. There's a litany of them. And a lot of these grants are no match grants. You don't even have to put up a match at the council level. You can just apply for them. And that's one way of dealing with it. I was kind of got a little distracted here. Did I address all your points?
Greatly appreciated. Definitely want to give the floor to other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you,
So,
Anthony. Thank you,
Lauren?
Ryan. Deb, I see your hand up. Did you want to ask a question, or should we move on to some others in the
Well,
chat?
I have a question I want to ask, but I just want people to know that they can ask questions and not just in chat. And I think it's easiest if they just go to the reactions button on the bottom and click on raise your hand, so you can get a sense of everybody who wants to
Oh,
talk.
I see it now. Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
this is going to be very helpful too, because there's 20
Okay,
people. And so for Lauren to sort of be fair and call
Thank
in.
you for pointing that out.
Yeah, we're going to ask you to do that. So I'll ask my question to get it going, and then Lauren, I'll give it back to you to call in people as they raise their hand. Okay.
Yep, sounds good.
So in Montclair, we just recently passed a complete streets implementation plan, which has identified streets and a general overall plan for complete streets, but have had a lot of difficulty sort of figuring out how to implement it. And we don't have a complete streets committee. So I'm really interested sort of in the relationship of the committee to the process of implementing the policy. So where does the committee come in the decisions? Does it initiate, we should be working on these streets? Does it have to have approval from the committee? Besides the checklist, sort of what's the process relationship of the committee to the overall complete streets implementation plan?
Okay, so in Eatontown, all the financial decisions, they're technically made by either the administrator or the governing body. So you just moved on my screen, so I'm trying to find you. Okay, so they're made in those capacities. We in Eatontown, for all of our committees, we have a council liaison to every committee. And the purpose of that individual is to, just what the name suggests, they bring back to council what the committee is working on and their comments, and they present to the committee council and administrative ideas and vantage points. And that person functions as the go-between, whether it's formally or also informally, not just at the meeting, but you know that Councilperson Smith is your person and you can chat with him or her informally to advance your initiative. In theory, the council members want to be liaisons for their committees. In the beginning of the year, we appoint council liaisons to the committees and we put them on, and hopefully, the groups they want to serve with. So your council liaison should care about the complete streets group, and it's not just a punishment assignment. Oh God, I gotta go with them. So hopefully, currently this year and prior, we've had council liaisons that very much care. Okay, now, in terms of a project, if it's a planning board or zoning board, that's really outside of the committee's purview because it's done at the board level and the engineer sees the process through. Where you would be interested is the following. When there is a planning board application, you as a committee could write comments to the planning board or the zoning board. You can go to the planning board and zoning board and say, we've reviewed the application for XYZ company at 123 Apple Street, and we would like to see more sidewalks. Not coming in, you people are awful, you're horrible, you don't care, you're a bad developer, because all your credibility's out the window and nobody would listen to you, not even me. But instead, hey, you're expecting to have a lot of kids come to your store. Kids like to ride bikes. Could we trouble you to put a bike rack? And just, you can come informally as a committee, anoint one person to come and read and speak. We've done that before, where our committee has done that. So it's both showing up as a member of the public and advocating, and it's also through your liaison back and forth. And lastly, let me just say, when you're out at community events and community forums, you see Asbury Park all over, right? They have their town rides where they ride through. Same concept that Eatontown does their community walks. When you're talking in that regard, the people who come, who thought they were just there to talk about trees, they're also going to be talking about the other side of town. There's a new project, and look, we got to put a bike rack, we got to put some sidewalks, and that's how you engage people. So don't underestimate the informality of it and how successful the informality can actually be. That's how we were. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, that's well spoken.
Thank you, Anthony. So let's move to the next question in the chat. Paul asks if you can talk a little bit more about the bike lanes in Eatontown, and also about curb bump outs as crosswalks. He wonders if you have any specific standards that you use, like NACDO, for example, that you use to determine the types of bike lanes and crosswalks that you use.
No, but what we did do, we have applied for, and we're in the process of the New Jersey DOT, Leanne, please tell me the title, Bike and Pedestrian Planning Assistant Grant. We won this grant through the state. You can get, your towns can apply as well, and you submit crash data from the police department, and you focus on problematic areas in town, and the state of New Jersey assigns a planner to your cause. You create a committee and they meet with you. They have a public forum, they create a web page social media presence. They have a survey. We had over 100 people respond to a survey, which quite frankly is actually a good number for what we were trying to do. And that planning assistance grant was intended to address the same things Paul's asking about now. They're going to help us create a plan to address bike lanes in Eatontown. So now when we pave a road and we know that we want to improve bike lanes, well, now that we've paved Smith Street, before we pave Smith Street, and we tell the engineer, hey, here's our master plan amendment on bikes and pedestrian access. When you go out to bid, put these in. Maybe we add a bump out, maybe we add a sidewalk, maybe we add a bike lane just for that purpose. So we're in the process of doing that now, Paul, and that pedestrian and bike audit, the official name, I have it here, but you can Google it or email me and I will tell you. But that is a state program that you should apply for. They send a planner to your borough municipality. It is fantastic. Again, not my idea. Our volunteers brought it up. It was fantastic. And we're in the process of doing that now. And, we will take that document and we will apply for grants with that document.
What's that called again?
So
You didn't remember.
I have it here. And it's an NJDOT pedestrian. Where's Leanne when I need her? I know she.
Leanne, why don't you
It's the Bicycle and Pedestrian Local Technical Assistance Program.
Something like that. Yeah, thank you, Leanne.
Yeah,
And
it is a mouthful. And then the other one you also got in Eatontown was the one from North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority for your Greenways plan.
Yeah, that's the
So
one that
there's a couple of them, which are
That's
two
the
separate
one that
things,
I
but that was
started-
also Complete Streets Technical Assistance under that umbrella.
Yes, and so when I started the presentation and I referenced thanking Leanne, she was instrumental in that planning document. So that planning document allowed us to apply for one grant, and then we saw the need, so we applied for this other planning assistance, and that planning, because remember, funds are scarce. And so a grant writing organization is not going to give money to a bunch of people all over the place that don't know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I have to rely on experts. And so when we have the document of a planner, professional licensed planner helping us, that is what we use to help win grants and move in that direction.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Anthony, maybe what we can do is we can talk after this and get sort of a list of some of those resources, and I could send that out to everybody.
Oh, great.
In email
Sure.
With your
That'd be
slides as
helpful.
well, I think, yeah. Okay, so Lisa, I think you've had your hand up for a while. Let's go with you next.
Thanks, Lauren. Mayor Anthony, can you tell me how you found the inertia to move the support from your town and your constituents to go from a complete streets resolution to a complete streets ordinance? Because there was such a flurry of boroughs and municipalities that adopted complete streets in 2012, 2013, 2014. And now we're 2021 and a lot has changed and a lot of the politicians have changed. And I'm not sure they're the same ones or they understand what complete streets are anymore.
Yep. And, I think it was real simple, less is more. When you had a small committee, again, broad-based, not 6 people who put their helmets on and ride 75 miles on a bike and do nothing else and that's it. And I wish I could be that athletic, but a broad-based group of people, someone who likes to walk in the park, someone that likes to ride a bike, someone that is in maybe the mom or dad group pushing the kids in the strollers. Those, when you have a cross section of people, you get more broad-based support, number one. And that group, when they go back to the Shade Tree Commission and they talk about parks and trees and how we can get people walking through, and someone on the business committee talking about how wouldn't it be great if you can get more traffic into your plaza, getting people to believe. So the business people may think of business, certain people may think of health, and they're both valid. If you can get those people around the same vocabulary. Some people, complete streets is just a dorky phrase, who cares, whatever. All they want is people to get to their business plaza. All right, well then don't call it complete streets for them. Call it getting people to shop and pay you money, like meet them on their terms. And the police department, they care about pedestrian safety. They're tired of people dying in the roads. And let's talk to the police department about, hey, wouldn't it be great if you advocated for a bike lane or sidewalks on this dangerous part of town? So what I had said in the beginning, I really think is the most effective. Each group focuses on what's important to them. And when they reach out to the people connected to their group, the movement grows, right? That is how Eatontown was successful. It was naturally evolved by, and you'll see in the slide, a list of people. When you think of complete streets, not a single one of you have ever thought of the historical committee, I guarantee it. But the historical committee had a walking trail. And that walking trail is something we promoted. Go take a 2-mile walk and learn about Eatontown history. And while we're walking with them, look at that sidewalk. That mayor stinks. Go get your sidewalk fixed, and try to connect things and meet people where they are. But what town are you in, Lisa?
I'm in Princeton.
You're in Princeton, okay. Well, Princeton is a visionary in so many sustainable jerseys. Am I missing something? They've been very active.
I was actually not really asking on behalf of Princeton. I'm thinking of a few other towns that I work with on my professional part of my world.
Okay.
But thank you.
Yeah. Well, call me or email me.
I will. Thanks.
All right, so back to the chat, Josh asks, in Eatontown and through this process, are there bike lanes and walkability for students to bike and walk to school? And are there bike racks at the school?
So all of our schools have bike racks. However, we recently, I forget the name of the term, the verb, what the Board of Ed did. They grade banded the schools. So a few of the schools are kindergarten, first grade, and so our middle school campus is 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. And at that area, of course, you would expect more bike riding as well. But we also have bikes because they have playgrounds and kids go and play there after hours. So our schools have bike racks. We got involved in the Safe Routes to School program. Why? Because it makes sense, opens us up to funding when parents care about their kids' safety, so they're going to be interested. So we applied at the municipal level for Safe Routes to School, and we achieved the gold accreditation. And we're also asking the Board of Ed to apply, because so when both entities have a Safe Routes to School designation, regardless of what they are, you fare better when the funding comes out. And what I've done is asked our police department, okay, take a look at your crosswalks where the crossing guards are. Tell me where the sidewalks are missing. Is the striping good? Do we need bigger stop signs? What do we need in that area by the crossing guard? And that, because I don't have children, I don't know what the kids are walking, how they're walking there. So tell me. And we have maps of all of our intersections for crossing guards. And I don't get credit for that. That was done before me, but we have that. So we know when there's a grant opportunity out there, okay, we'd like a sidewalk in front on Raleigh Court because it's the only area that we don't have something. And so we can target our issues, but that's how we work on it.
And are kids involved at all in the Routes to School program, or have you been able to involve kids at all in that planning?
So we got the school board involved, and then this little thing called COVID happened, and the Board of Ed is very busy dealing with all the in school, out of school, all that stuff. So justifiably, I think it was hands off for a while with that. We're hoping now in the summer, as they're getting back to school, we have the Safe Routes and that organization working with our Board of Ed. So they are looking to have programs. So we haven't fully done anything yet, but that is where we will involve our kids.
Okay. And Josh, I see your hand raised as well. And since this is your question, do you want to jump in here? And then Polly will circle back to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on one of the things. So you talked a lot about walking and crosswalks, but not really about what the question I really asked, which was about bike lanes. So in Cranford, a lot of our kids bike to school. But there's also a cohort of students whose parents drive in large SUVs to school. And so those two worlds are colliding sometimes, where you have kids on bikes navigating an environment of SUVs. And you also have a collection of people in my town who don't like kids on sidewalks biking, but it really is the only place for a kid to bike without threat of being hit by a car. So I guess my question is like in Eatontown, where does a student who wants to ride a bike to school, because busing I work in school, so busing is at high school, you have to live less than 2.5 miles from the school, and it's 2 miles from middle school and elementary schools. So if you live 2 miles from a middle school and your mom or dad works and you have to bike yourself to school, how in Eatontown do you do that safely? I know, and I'm getting, I guess I'm new to this, but I'm lost in I understand the grant side and getting status of gold and bronze and all that stuff, but in a practical, real sense, are kids in Eatontown able to bike to school in a bike lane unobstructed by vehicles, or is that still something that's in progress?
In progress. The answer is no, they can't. It's in progress. And the reality is most children ride their bikes on sidewalks. And outside of the advocacy where cars are supposed to share the road with bikes, I think the reality of safety is most people feel more comfortable riding their bikes on a sidewalk. And I think that we have to deal with that reality. While we would love for people to respect bicyclists, and they should, by the way, people don't feel that safety yet. And so I see probably more people riding their bikes on sidewalks than in the roads, number one. Number two, kids riding their bikes to school would only be in one location because the middle school and elementary school for that age group where they can physically ride their bike is in one section of town. All the neighborhood schools have banded. So it's no longer 3 elementary schools, K through 6, scattered throughout town. One school building is K through 2. One school building is 3 through 4, and they're not riding their bikes. But another school building is 5 and 6. Well, they could ride their bikes to school. And 7 and 8, they could ride their bikes to school. So that middle school campus, so to speak, is an area where we are, where we will see a safe routes to school focus, because those are the kids most likely to ride their bikes to school. And I've already spoken, her name was Lisa Lee. She runs it through Easy Ride. She helps us, very helpful for us, is getting to this campus, getting a safe spot for the kids to ride their bike away from all the SUVs, rushing to get to Starbucks after little Johnny gets out of the car and not noticing all the kids riding. That's certainly going to be one of their focuses. The reality is that we're just not there yet, and we have to plan for it.
I'm on mute again. Polly, I think you can jump in now. Thank you.
Still got my hand up.
Hi. So all of the above. To your point, Lisa, we also in Asbury Park have a complete streets policy, like many cities did, and we have a checklist. Asbury Park Complete Streets Coalition submitted the checklist to the city. It was not adopted formally. We're also not a committee in the city. We're an advocacy group. So I don't know if you can hear my music on the background here. It's one of my favorite songs. Sorry. So what I'm so grateful for, Anthony, is that you're and you brought this up in the panel discussion that we had at the summit, is right at the beginning of this conversation, is building coalition among groups in your city. And that's what got you going and created this powerful, I don't say powerful, but effective, the ability to accomplish the things that you've accomplished. So right now, that's my takeaway here. So I'm not really asking a question so much. We're drilling down into the kinds of bike lanes that we have, whether kids should ride on the sidewalk, which is legal, by the way, but walkers hate it. Drivers don't necessarily respect people riding bikes. We still have a long way to go with regard to developing protected bike infrastructure in our cities, truly protected, not just striped, painted bike lanes. All that stuff, as you said, is we're not there yet. But what we are accomplishing right here in this meeting is that I think, or I am taking away that what we can do here in Asbury Park is bring together all of the different groups in the city, like the Shade Tree Commission, like the police department, like the Board of Ed, like the Green Team, like, and I've already had those casual conversations with these groups, but bringing everyone together for a meeting and hearing, as you said in the beginning here, hearing what they all want and finding out that, wow, everybody wants accessibility. Everybody wants to be able to get around the city safely. Everybody wants to see the parks utilized. So, and it kind of all comes together under a banner of what is complete streets. It's not just about bike lanes. It's not even just about walking. It's about all of the above. So I'm sorry, that's not really a question, but I'm going to hit you up. We're going to see you in Eatontown and get some organization here in Asbury Park. So I just want to say thank you.
And I just wanted to add to the prior question, someone mentioned the kids involved. I forgot. One of the things we did was a community walk in a neighborhood where there was a school. So in that section, the parents who in that particular neighborhood were able to walk their kids to school were able to share with us things about walking around to school as well. So that was very effective to have people. And in fact, there was a street, and I'm embarrassed to say it, there was no curb cut for sidewalks. I never would have known it, but you just push your stroller right off and you drop 6 inches down and you hope for the best. And so that was it. And I can't believe that exists. I don't know how it got through the development 50 years ago, but that's the reality. And so that's on our list. And I hope it was addressed, and I'm sure somebody will tell me it wasn't, but at least we can acknowledge that there was that problem. But we wouldn't have known that if it wasn't that walk, but that was focusing on a school.
Thank you, Anthony. Richard, did you have a question?
A question and a statement. First of all, I'd like to thank Mayor Anthony for his initiatives. As being somebody that's been in Hoboken, I lived in Hell's Kitchen for most of my life. And the saddest thing about New Jersey is a vehicular state. You can go to Florida, you can go to California, you can go to Arizona, and urban planning and the initiatives with bikeways are part of the economic structure of cities and towns. So Eatontown to Red Bank is a zone, a commercial zone. Let's just take it from Route 36 straight into downtown Red Bank. There should be a dedicated bikeway for the safety of everybody and for the economic structure. Urban planning and economics is all about our tax base. It needs to be done. I've lived in this area for 25 years, jointly also in Manhattan, but when they built the West Side Highway and they built all the park structures and systems throughout New York City, and the bikeways are a constant evolving thing in New York City, it hasn't transitioned into New Jersey. Not from a state perspective, not from an urban planning perspective, not from an economic perspective. It needs to be recognized because it's conditional upon our tax base. You know, you want people to have alternate ways. Like I can talk to the mayor in my town and go ahead and walk your baby carriage down 35 with your back towards traffic on Broad Street in Shrewsbury. Not a likely scenario, not even safe. Car jumps the curb, you're screwed. These are things that need to be addressed, budgetized, and put into perspective from the governor right down to through the state to each county. And there should be an access route north-south, east-west in every borough that's contiguous, designed to be so. You see it in California. It changes from municipality to municipality, but it is consistent. The pavement structure changes. The width of the bike path doesn't change. It has to be consistent. That's where we're way off base. There's no goal, there's no plan. Perhaps there is, and I thank Anthony for taking on this, but when I addressed my mayor and said, you're paving Sycamore, where are the bike lanes? The response was, we didn't feel it was necessary. That's a problem.
Okay.
I'm done.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Richard. Anthony, did you want to respond to that at all, or?
No, I just think when I travel, you know, my girlfriend and I travel, we kind of joke like, oh my God, you can do that here. Like you can walk safely, you can do things elsewhere. And it's sad because other areas plan regionally and it's just, it's just taken into it. In New Jersey, you cram as many people as possible into the short, tightest package that you can. And then the very end, everyone else is bumped out. And it's, how do you retrofit that? We look at one of our neighborhoods, happened to be my neighborhood, but I did not push for it. We had speeding as a major problem and walking in the roads was a problem. And when our engineer looked at it, the roads were too narrow. We just physically couldn't bump out. We couldn't do anything. And so it'll remain that problem forever. But in planning in the future, we're hoping as new neighborhoods come in Eatontown that we can plan appropriately for those realities that you never planned for in the past. That's larger neighborhoods got sidewalks and the poorer neighborhoods didn't. That's just how it was. And it's sad.
Right. Deb, did you have a question?
It wasn't a question, but I think I would love to hear from some other people that are here tonight from different towns, whether they have introduced the model policy or if they're thinking about it. And also if they have advisory committees like the one in Eatontown or like the one in Asbury Park, which isn't necessarily an official formal one. So it's sort of like some of the little bit of the time we have left for people to share some of their experiences in different towns. So we sort of get a feel for what else is going on in the state. So if anybody would like to share either sort of what's happening with the Green Street and Complete policy, whether they're introducing it or whether you're trying to incorporate things into an existing policy, and or if you have committees that sort of work with your municipality on it.
Josh?
Hi, everyone. We were having a committee meeting the other day in Cranford, and I thought one of the things, my question before was about involving students and children, because it was interesting. In our town, the committee went to 4th grade Girl Scouts and just asked them what their thoughts were about the town. And they went on a walk with these 4th grade Girl Scouts, and they pointed out the exact same thing many of the adults were seeing in the committee, same problems with certain crosswalks and sidewalks. But the reason I asked about involving kids is, and as somebody who's in schools, I work in schools, is that, we all look the same. I don't know if you all look at the Zoom, we all look at about the same age, about the same, demographic. And I think if it was a more diverse demographic, and sometimes the younger one, kids resonate with politicians, and I think Anthony would probably agree with that. If I go up and I say I don't think it's safe for kids to get to school, I'm saying it as a 47-year-old white man who cares, right? But if a 9-year-old girl says it in a Girl Scout uniform, it resonates just a touch differently. And I think that, I'm hoping in Cranford that we involve kids more in the process, because I think that kids resonate with people, and it's hard to get up at the podium and yell that you don't want this or don't want that, because for whatever reason, for whatever beliefs you have, but it's hard to say it to a 9-year-old girl. It just is. So I'm just bringing that as something I think that was interesting that's happening in Cranford. And I've been advocating for involving more kids, especially high school kids who maybe will have a little bit more of a voice. Problem is a lot of them want to drive, but I'm sure there's a few kids who might be interested. But I don't know if I think I've made my point. And Anthony, thanks for the presentation, and that was a good job.
Thank you. And I apologize. I didn't realize my camera was off for a while. I apologize. But yes, you're right. There are very few rules in politics. And one of the rules is you don't yell at a 9-year-old girl. So you're absolutely right. Having the Girl Scouts, having people would be, the kids involved, because look, if the kids are interested, the parents are interested. And that's important. And while you're talking to the kids on their level, you're talking to the parents on their level, you're getting the whole family involved. And we won part of this, I'll call it the Leanne Von Hagen Award grant, but part of our $10,000 grant helped us win a $275,000 grant. And what is that going to do? We're connecting 2 parks. And 2 parks will mean, and it'll make no sense to any of you on this, you don't know where I'm talking about, but just conceptually, you can go from an apartment complex through to 2 of our parks without having to pass through a busy state highway.
Yeah.
And so if you have the luxury of not having to worry about that, it just went right over your head. But if you live in a community that doesn't have people caring about how you get around, and now you can safely have your kids go through a park to get to a park, you have access to, 30 acres of recreation without having to go along a busy corridor. So we really focused on this grant as kids, and we're making a bridge to get across this little ravine of water. And we targeted kids and how families can get their kids safely from one park to another. So I firmly believe that if maybe not just the kid approach, but the family approach is really going to, convince the decision. There you go. Exactly. Sam, you got it, Sam.
There we go.
Bye.
Thank you, Anthony. So there's also a little bit of a conversation going on in the chat between Polly and Kathleen and Ryan about the difficulty of taking a nonprofit Complete Streets organization and turning it into a committee that is then working with the municipality and advising the municipality. Would you have any advice for people who are at that stage and kind of want to make that transition?
That are going from, if you can just rephrase that, going from one to another?
Yeah, so Point Pleasant and Asbury Park are right now nonprofit organizations, advocacy organizations. And it looks like, and Polly and Kathleen, you can step in if you'd like, it looks like there has been some attempt on their part to transition those groups into formalized advisory committees. But there's been some difficulty with that. Polly, do you want to elaborate?
Well, there's hesitancy on the part of our group as to whether it would be advantageous for us to be an official committee. Details I don't need to really go into, but the whether we can be more effective as an advocate group instead. I kind of think otherwise. Anthony, I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
So again, and I hope anyone who's listening on the playback knows the sarcasm when I speak. So please don't take my quotes verbatim and use them against me. But generally speaking, you have to understand politicians, we like to feel important. So you invite us to come to your stuff, you're playing on what's important to us. We feel that we're the decision makers, and so we'd like to be involved. And there might be a perceived challenge of these outside groups coming in and yelling at us versus a group of people inviting the council members, hey, we're not going to broadcast it on Facebook. We're not going to put it on the radio, but would you meet us at Starbucks next Tuesday at 2 o'clock for 45 minutes to chat about what we're doing in a real casual, informal setting? No aha moments, no gotchas, no warriors, trying to attack, real informal. That group of whoever from your advocacy group shows up, some will, some won't. That group and the council person over a few meetings might be able to say in Point Pleasant or in Asbury Park, you know what? Let's make this a monthly meeting. Let's just chat monthly and talk about it. And that will work itself into something the council can pass a resolution literally on the spot. You don't even need it on the agenda. Someone can offer a motion at any meeting. It's the simplest, most basic form of legislative action, and it could be done so quickly. So I wouldn't focus on all the minutiae to get there. I would just start informally meeting in Point Pleasant. Can we meet in your downtown area and walk with you for 30 minutes next Saturday and talk about how, look what's missing. If you put a bike rack in one of these public corridors, so when we shop at the antique store that my mother's at 48 times a week in Point Pleasant, if you can lock your bikes here, look how great that would be. Bike rack is $200. Does your park department have $200 to put a bike rack here? I would do it very informally that way, as opposed to an advocacy group, because that kind of comes off very strong. Just me.
I get it.
All right. Sylvia, did you have a question? And then I think we'll end it after that.
Oh, I just wanted to echo Josh on the kids. I been involved in West Windsor with an effort to get a sidewalk in, and we went to council and talked about how it was important And when people started talking about the kids getting dropped off on the late bus and having to scramble up this embankment because traffic was coming and there was no sidewalk and they didn't know what to do and they had their school instruments with them and the whole saga, the whole tone changed, and all of a sudden council was, oh my gosh, we can't let this happen to kids. And I thought it was just very effective, and I just wanted to share that.
Thank you.
We have one comment thing that Candace wrote that I think would be very interesting. She mentioned, but it's scrolling so fast it's hard to find. She indicated that the great thing about the checklist is that it doesn't require something, but if the applicant doesn't want to provide it or they're not addressing it, they have to say why, right? And so if they don't say why, there's a glaring hole in their application that even the most apathetic board member, God, I would hope, would read it and say, hey, why not? Or one of your board members that you actually have a connection to can say, hey, I noticed that you don't have a bike rack and you're not even saying why. Could you explain why? You know, go to the planner. The planner is testifying with their license under penalty of perjury. In your opinion, Mr. Planner, would this project be in any way a detriment if a bike rack were added? They're experts. They're testifying in a quasi-judicial setting. Have your board member ask, would you tell me as a planner licensed in the state of New Jersey, would a bike rack cause any detriment to this project? And see what they say. Well, Mr. Applicant, your own planner sees no problem with the bike rack. Could I trouble you for one bike rack? It sounds like a tiny thing to talk about, and some advocates may be very discouraged that, God, this guy keeps talking about bike racks. But when you put these little things in place, they start building. And I think that's a good point Candace mentioned for the checklist. They point out the deficiencies so you know where to follow up.
Hey, Lauren,
Yes.
can we go back to something that Anthony addressed earlier? And that happened to be with developers. And he spoke briefly about having professionals. So when developers are involved, of which they are in the 35 corridor for certain, you know, you can ask a developer to add anything in because that's the right time. It's in the planning stage. Or Anthony, in your opinion, are there, you know, landscape architects or urban planning professionals, whether they're from Princeton or New York City, and there's plenty of them in the metro state area. I call on many of them myself. They're my clients. Are they engaged in this on your end?
Yeah, it's, you have to set the tone. When I meet with developers, concept meetings, I say all the time, Eatontown wants sidewalks. Eatontown, you know, find an advocate in your governing body, whether it's the mayor or council president, council person, whoever, and just start with the dialogue. We, you know, when you're creating this, we want sidewalks. We have a sidewalk ordinance. What could be the logical reason that your town would not pass a sidewalk ordinance? Developer builds a sidewalk, or they put money in escrow for you to spend the money elsewhere to put a sidewalk.
Correct.
What would be the logic? What would be, you know, so these little things do add up, but with the developers, it's literally a straight ask. Would you please do this?
Of course. But then I find that there's inconsistency in what those parameters are. Like, okay, so if you're going to put in a sidewalk, is it 6 feet, 8 feet? Is it a bikeway? Is it not a bikeway? And then the next property down the street isn't compliant with that at all. So therein lies the problem. How does it become compliant on a stretch of highway, say from in Eatontown, from the mall all the way to Red Bank?
One at a time, short of eminent domain, one at a time, and we're not gonna even discuss eminent domain, but yeah, one at a time.
Of course. All right. I really appreciate everybody's cooperation, and I'd love to do this in person at some point because I think we can get a few more things done, but Zoom is Zoom, so here we are.
Yeah, we're virtual for now still. We'd love to consider that in the future as well, but we'll have to see how things pan out as we head back into a winter this year.
Oh, we'll have to have a fundraising block party with whatever.
Yeah.
Good wine. I'm Italian, Anthony's Italian. I can make some good wine and some good vendors.
All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for a great discussion. It is a little bit past 8, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're doing a little bit of a longer meeting for this because we do want to meet by monthly. So we want to have enough time each time we meet for a good discussion. So I am going to toss it back over to Deb here in a second. Anthony, maybe we could share your email with folks here so that they could follow up with you afterwards and connect with you outside of this meeting. So we'll put it in the chat now, and then I will also share it in a follow-up email.
Special thank you to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Deb, did you want to say a few last words?
Yeah, so there's a couple of announcements that Leanne reminded us of that we're gonna, I want to just throw out to everybody. First of all, I hope everybody knows that Governor Murphy has signed the safe passing law, which has been in the making. Advocates have been working for this law for over a decade. It is now the strongest safe passing law in the country. And for those of you who don't know it, the basic components of the law are that a motorized driver needs, when approaching someone who's not in a car, so if you're walking, biking, rolling, pushing a stroller, the driver will need to see if they can move over a lane. If they can, they're required to do that. If they can't move over a lane, then if they have to pass that person, it has to be with 4 feet between the car and that vulnerable road user. And if they can't pass with 4 feet safely, then they have to slow down to 25 miles per hour or whatever the lower speed limit is and be prepared to stop. So that's a very complete guidance, really, than any of the other passing laws in the country. That was just signed this past week. We will have information about that on our website as well. And going forward, it takes 7 months for it to become law, but as it becomes law, there will be a lot of discussion about how to educate drivers, how to work with state agencies to make sure that primarily there's education, and then of course the question of what kind of enforcement local municipalities will undertake. So that's sort of coming in the future. There's 2 major summits that are coming up. New Jersey Trail and Greenway Summit is September 22nd and 23rd. And if anybody's not getting that information, let us know. We'll make sure that you get it. And the New Jersey Complete Streets Summit, which is done by Leanne's group out of Voorhees, is October 22nd. And both of those conferences are still virtual. So, and for now, we're going to stay virtual. I would love to do some in-person. One advantage to doing virtual is that we're asking people to join us from across the state. So it does make it a little easier to meet.
That's true.
Yeah. So first, thank you, Anthony. This was really great. It was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me in.
Molto bene, grazie, signore.
Thank you.
It was great to hear sort of the details and particularly your approach. I think there are a lot of comments about your approach of bringing in people from the different committees, from the different perspectives in the town, and sort of building.
Just one clarification. That wasn't my approach. That was the approach they did, and that's why it was successful. I'm the beneficiary of their approach, just so you're clear, because I got a couple of them on the line right now. I want them to know that they did it.
But I give them the credit for doing that, and thank you for highlighting their work. How's that?
Thank you.
So
your name is Debbie?
This has really been a terrific conversation. I'm sure there's lots more that people have questions and want to ask. So we're sort of going to figure out as we go what the best way to bring more of the experiences from all the different towns into the conversation. For now, we did record this. We're going to share that recording. We're going to share the slides, Anthony, that you put together. We are thinking about doing the next one at the end of September or beginning of October. We're going to send out a doodle poll to everybody just to get a sense, because we don't sort of have a regular time yet picked out. The other thing we want to hear back from you all, of course, any feedback on this session. We'd love to hear from you. Everybody has Lauren's email and mine probably. So please feel free to tell us what you got out of it, what we can change, what works, what doesn't. And the other is we're going to be asking for topics for like the next few sessions. I can tell you a couple that have been suggested. One was suggested was sort of how to incorporate or bring up Vision Zero as part of complete streets in a town. That has been raised. How to like what some of the details of doing an ordinance to get a committee, because a lot of people seem to be interested in getting a formal committee with some powers within town councils. That's also come up. There's just a whole number of new projects around building trails that are networked with boroughs and towns. That's also been a lot of interest. So any sort of other topics that people have that they'd like to do a session on, we're gonna hopefully do some kind of a form so we can get them all together in one place. So thank you, everybody. I hope you found it as helpful as I did.
That was really nice. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much. And again, Anthony, terrific presentation.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
You too.
Have a great night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Lauren.